Muse, and welcome to the Cosmic Ear Hustle, where we talk about the voodoo that we do to make this world a better place. For those of you who are squeamish about that word, voodoo just means spirit. The spirit of making the most of what you've been given. That creates alchemy. Alchemy is magic, and we give it back to the universe in the best of ways. Love and light, everybody. I am iiiYansaje Muse, the Black Madonna of the airwaves. As always, bringing you the music, the mystics, and the mojo on your Saturn-ruled, SU-venerated Saturday. And welcome to this special edition of the Cosmic Ear Hustle. Now, today's topic is embracing change in changing times. And changes is Oya's middle name, those of us that live that Ifa life. And today I have a very, very special guest, none other than Professor James Small, who is also a priest of the Orisa Oya, who has come to join me to talk about some changes and how we as a people can buckle down, keep our spirits up, and stay divinely aligned as all of these changing times come rolling in. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back. This is the Cosmic Ear Hustle on 222.9, the Mothership, your one woman and the divine created radio station for the Aquarian age. Don't make me land a tornado where I could have been a cool breeze. Oya. The Uranus Collection, brought to you by the Mothership Mystic Boutiq. All proceeds go to 222.9, the Mothership Internet Radio for the road less traveled. Beam up.
Oh, you're back.
Yes. I was about to say, oh, hurry up and sit down. Oh, and we are back, and 222.9 the Mothership Internet Radio welcomes back again none other than Baba James Small. We've got this 111 energy going on. Because the last time you came, it was November 11th, 2021, and now it is January 11th, 2025. So welcome back, and how are you?
I'm doing fine. I just had all of my letters sitting on Shango. That's what, when I'm not wearing them, Shango wear them. So.
I see. I'm loving the statues in the background.
Yeah, that's Shango and Oya.
Ashe. We all know about Shango and Oya. That's just a very dynamic combined energy, eh?
It is. It is quite some energy. And our people need to understand those energies and how to initiate them in themselves and use them in their lives.
But what practical suggestion would you give? Because it's like, you kind of took the first question already off of my list.
Well, the big thing is, what do we want out of life? And then for most people, they don't know because no one has ever taught us how to know what we want out of life. You know, we make an assumption that we know that when we never ever ask the question of ourselves, or we're never taught why we should ask the question of ourselves. And then we grow into life, into our circumstances, our experiences, and we have all kinds of challenges, and no one has taught us the methodologies necessary to meet life's challenges psychologically, spiritually, culturally, intellectually. We're not taught that in a deliberate way. I mean, we learn it haphazardly through experiences and hoping that you have the right experience with the right person to learn how to effectively solve problems or how to effectively bring about change in your life without it being a problem. And so when I talk about the Orishas and I talk about especially Oya, which symbolizes change in the human consciousness and in nature
Yes.
and in the cosmos all at the same time, um, no one ever teaches that as a process to people generally, you know? You're lucky
Yes.
if by the time you reach 50s, 60s, struggling late 40s, 50s, 60s, that you figure it out. But then all the critical experiences that needed you to know that has already happened in your life.
Hmm.
And it's happened in messy ways because you weren't prepared to solve any of the problems that came your way. Like you weren't taught those skills. You weren't taught to recognize in yourself the powers and the forces that would help you meet the fundamental and basic challenges. Just for instance, when you're a teenager and you meet
Mm-hmm.
the first boy or the first girl and you feel that thing, that attraction that we call love, we can feel
Mm-hmm.
attraction for love. And then if the attraction leads to attachment, oh my God, then we know we're in love. Yet neither attraction or attachment is love or even close to love.
Hmm.
But we move on through life without a knowledge of how to move from attraction to attachment to awareness to a consciousness to an understanding to an enlightenment that would allow you to manage yourself in the world. Because no one teaches us that. And
Hmm.
in our ancient space, that's exactly what we were taught on a daily basis. You know, there were processes that as young women you went through in the secret societies just for women. Those
Yes.
societies were simply to prepare you to meet the challenges that a female would normally meet in those societies,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
The same thing with men. Men were in the young men's secret societies to prepare them for those responsibilities and challenges that lie ahead for men in their society. And what are the tools you need to have in your consciousness, in your understanding, to help you navigate those challenges and to
Mm-hmm.
transform yourself from the changes that those challenges brought on. And so hopefully tonight we can kind of help people a little bit understanding or understand that that process still exists and
Absolutely.
it is still necessary to exist in the societies we find ourselves in today. You know?
Thank you for that answer because well, in kind of rewording the question, how the Orisha Shango represents fire and the inner passions and the inner transformation, and it's like Shango was the fire, where Oya is the wind, and transformations within can be tough when we kind of grow up in this cookie cutter society where for the longest time, we're actually told what to want. And we spend a huge part of our adult lives separating what we want out of life from what we were told to want out of life. And how do you think those things are affecting the psyche of our people today, especially granted with what's looming ahead of us for the next 4 years?
Well, you know, you mentioned Shango, the fire, that inner passion that accepts the need for change. It accepts, it is not change itself, it's not transformation itself. It is the acceptance for the need for the transformation, the need for change as the process in which growth takes place. It is in under
Mhm.
those circumstances that it must marry change. It must marry oh yeah, because all of that passion means nothing unless it enters the process of change. And so as
Right.
we live in this, and there's a third Orisha, which we'll bring up later, that really represents transformation as the result of the change. Um, the society today, we are training people to be almost zombies, modeled after a kind of a clone that allows for the powers that be to maintain order in the social construct. So
Mm-hmm.
if they get the clone organized in a way that allows them to manage the clone, then order can be maintained by those who control the social order. And all of the institutions that we're in prepare us for that function. But the human spirit constantly fights against this. And this
Mm-hmm.
is where we get the rebellious child. Something in the child is saying, this ain't right. This
Right.
doesn't feel right. I need to feel free. But the social order is saying, no, this is the step you take. This is where you take the step. This is how your leg looks taking the step. This is how your mind looks informing your leg to take that step. And that's the way it
Mm-hmm.
should be. Yet the child is hearing his mind saying, step where the hell you want to step. Go
Right.
where you want to go. And that's never in the path of the clone. It's never in the path of the zombie. And that's when you get conflicts. They call it
Ah.
rebellion, you know. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, the rebellion is the urge to be free, to be me. In a society that says, I've decided what you're going to be, and what I want you to be is what satisfies me, so that I may control that which you think is you.
Right.
And so, how do we find our way in such a place to the freedom to be who the universe created you to be? Every
Mm-hmm.
one of us is a unique creation in the universe, absolutely unique, yet at the same time, we're the same. Now, that is
Mm-hmm.
what they would call quantum physics. That you over in Texas, and I'm here in New York. But your mind and my mind is as much of a conversation as your voice and ear and my voice and ear is having. Yet we cannot see the conversation our mind is having, but we know our mind is having this conversation. That's why we can have the verbal conversation.
Yes.
That is a sense of freedom that all beings should enjoy, and not be able to say, I am the captain of the mothership, instead of saying, I am in touch with the captain of the mothership, but I'm not the
Mm-hmm.
captain of the mothership. I'm Professor Small, sitting in my shrine, talking to the captain of the mothership. And yet, me and
Ah.
the captain of the mothership can share the same feelings, the same thoughts, same aspirations, and the same desires without uttering a single word, and be conscious that we are sharing those things.
As well as with the listeners.
Absolutely. Because they
Yes.
too become that extension of us, as we are an extension of them. And so, in the world that we live in, change is the one thing that is going to happen, whether you want it to happen, whether you know that it's happening, whether you desire it to happen, whether you know how to make it happen, it is going to happen. Change will happen. But change is not an incident, and it's not a static thing. It is a process that doesn't have a beginning and doesn't have an ending. And you,
Ashe.
the being, you, the organism that's going through that change and transformation, everything else around you is also going through change and transformation relative to your changing and transforming all at the
Absolutely.
same time. But we're not taught to be aware of that in this culture.
Hmm.
You know, in African culture, you had ceremonies to celebrate change.
Yes.
You had an
And
icon like an Oya that represents that celebration of change.
Absolutely.
and you had a
And
concept, oh yeah, that was deep in your mind that always kept you in tune with the need for change.
yes. And I was going to say that with the essence of Oya, that's the reason why Oya is symbolized by spirals. One of her symbols is spirals because it's the changes that never end and never begin. Kind of like the world keeps turning. It's always going to be the stagnant energy that's going to be moved by the essence of Oya. And
Mhm.
by, her sacred number being nine, and we have these components that, give signs of these forces of nature, the language of the spirit, I like to say. 2025 adds up to a number nine. And, this is a year of transformation. Even in general spirituality speaks this. And it kind of makes me laugh because, transformation and finalities and changes, these are all attributes to the Orisa Oya that are being spoken by people who are not really privy to these traditions. So, with all of these changes coming forth, and we all know in the Orisha tradition that Shango and Oya are symbolized by lightning, and lightning has struck three major buildings. You know what those three major buildings are, right?
No.
When the New Year's strike, I think it hit. I know the Empire State Building got hit, the Washington
Yeah.
Monument got hit. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
is already striking
That,
lightning over
that,
all of these major buildings, which is a really huge omen. What are you? I mean, I'm not really feeling spooked out by it, but it's like serious, much needed changes are afoot because unfortunately, humanity has gotten more and more comfortable in a lobotomized place to me. And I just wanted to know, as a far more seasoned priest of Oya than I am, what are your thoughts
well,
on
I
these
don't.
kinds of signs from the Orisha Oya?
Yeah. When I think of those things, some of it is arbitrary because something is happening all over the world. Something's happening in Hong Kong, something is happening in Ghana, something happening in Nigeria, something is happening similar everywhere in the world. What we should get from that is the possibility of what can happen to cause change.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is based on possibilities because we live these lives, and on average, these organisms called humans are around about 70 years. Then
Mm-hmm.
we're no more in these bodies. So we've got 70 years to figure out why we're here and to try to put some effort forward to fulfill that purpose. Unfortunately, given the ruling order of the world today, most people never figure out why they're here and how
Mm.
do any ever get to fulfill their purpose. And so what you see is energy like lightning being
Yes.
arbitrary because it's not being utilized.
Right.
It's just stored up. It's like an earthquake. It can take no more. So it breaks out from the pressure to relieve the pressure. Each of us in the universe are a or a universe. We are many universe doing the same
Yes.
thing that the greater universe is doing. But how much of us know anything about how the universe works anymore? We
Mm.
don't even know the basic cosmology, meaning where are the stars, where are the constellations, what shifts have been made in them in the last month or the last year or the last 10 years, how those shifts affect us, or at least informs us on how we're being affected, right? I know when I look up at the star and I see this constellation and I see this thing happen on Earth, if I understand the relationship to these changes that's taking place every second of every day, then I know exactly what my function should be in the social
Right.
order or in the
Mm-hmm.
ecological order or in the cosmic order. But if I don't have a clue, then I'm just helping to create confusion which usually
Mm-hmm.
leads to or results from ignorance for the most part. It usually leads to antagonism. It usually leads to some sort of first envy, which leads to jealousy because they are able to accomplish this and I'm not able to accomplish this. They're able to acquire this and I'm not able to acquire this. Out of those, not being informed on the just the general ecological and cosmic rules, we operate from this emotional space of ignorance that leads to envy, to jealousy, to anxiety, to anger, conflict, and then violence, and many times death. And that becomes a daily routine in the life of almost any person, any community, any society, because of fundamental ignorance to the basic laws of the universe, which is represented by an Oya, a cosmic
Ashe.
reality which is caused change. It's going to happen no matter what. But if I don't know it's happening, I don't know it's supposed to happen. I'm not prepared for it's happening. Something's going to happen though, except it's not going to be orderly. It's not going to be harmonious. It's not going to be balanced. It's going to be conflicting. It's not going to be dynamic, but it's going to be oppressive. And so this all comes down to what is our knowledge base? What do
Yes.
we understand about being human in this world? I don't know what's going on Anunnaki territory or on Mars, Jupiter, Pluto. I don't know what's going on there. I'm on the planet Earth. I need to know what's going on here, right? I need to
Absolutely.
understand what's going on here because this is where I'm at in this instant. And the
Yes.
one thing that happens here is change. And I need
Mm-hmm.
to understand change and the process that we call change and how to recognize things that results from change in my experience in the environment I find myself in. And even
I
how
go
to
about that.
stimulate change, how to cause it to come about, how to encourage change, how to stimulate change, how to promote the idea of change.
Can you name a pivotal point in your life where you underwent some changes that really helped you to, what am I looking for here?
So mine's
What experiences have you had in life that made you really home in on accepting life's changes, embodying them, and really becoming more of a process? Was there a one time pivotal moment, or was it a series of changes? Because children of Oya are always going through changes and unknowingly causing changes. So, was there any one specific defining moment that brought all of this knowledge to be, or was it a series of events?
well for me, like for most people, it was a series of events. Unlike most people, I grew up in a root woman's house. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Unlike most people, I didn't grow up in a root woman's house being afraid of her or ashamed of her, but just the contrary, being proud of her and worked with her like my other siblings, and fought for her integrity in the community we lived in. I knew about being African from her, not from a book, not from a school, not from a TV, not from a preacher or teacher. I knew that from my grandmother. And so I had a certain look, and I grew up in the rural areas in the country on a farm. So I had a certain perspective with nature being my friend, my buddy, and I lived the change of nature every year. When the the plum trees didn't have any plums and didn't have any leaves, and we watched the leaves come back, and we watched the green plums, and we would eat the sour green plums, and we would wait for the red plums and the yellow, and we would eat the red plums, and we would watch the elderberry trees bloom with the big green bushel berries, and then watch those berries turn dark purple and black, and we'd just sit in trees and eat elderberries all day, and then pick them and made wines with them. And we knew that we would pick them when they get to certain places, and we put them in these bottles and these big, and we buried them in the ground because they knew that we
Mhm.
knew there were going to be a time all the berries were going to be gone, but we would have gallons and gallons and gallons of elderberry wine to last the entire year, and elderberry medicine to last the entire year, because we picked them when that process came. We watched the elderberry go through its changes. On a farm, you watch animals go through their changes. You watch them get pregnant. You watch them give birth. You watch them take care of their young. You are helping them through these processes. Um,
Mhm.
you know that a certain time of year we fish in the river for this type of fish, and a certain time of year we fish for this type of fish. We would go spear fishing in the creek, and we know a certain time of night you can spear fish, and certain time you don't spear fish. So you live it in nature and you follow. And the moon tells you most of these things. So everybody had an almanac because they wanted to know what the moon was doing, because the moon going to tell us whether we
Yes.
can go fishing tonight or whether we go fishing next week. The moon would tell us, do you plant watermelon now or do you plant sweet potatoes now? The moon told us these things.
Yes.
And so we lived in that cycling of nature. And I came out of that. I think it was a shock when I first went to a city when I was about maybe 14 or something, and went to the
Mhm.
town, because I lived in the woods, literally in the country. But in that, we had also had a church, and you had to be a part of that process. And that process was about change. And so, and then at the same time, you've got a grandmother who is the root woman, right? But she's also the chief mother in the church. So,
Ah.
someone may think that a contradiction. We thought that not to be a contradiction at all. And she was called mother. In Yoruba, that word would have been Iya, but everybody called her Iya, or mother pigeon. Pigeon was
Ah, okay.
a name they gave because she danced beautifully. And this pigeon being the bird that danced, that from a child, she was called Miss Pigeon, or Mother Pigeon. And we just kind of lived in a harmony with nature. You know, you couldn't plant a farm unless you were working with nature. You were working with the moon. You were working with the sun. You were working with the seasons. So you had to do all of these things in harmony with nature. And so we
Mhm.
we, we got to be that got to be our life. Um, how do you stay in harmony with nature in all that you do? And I never changed from that. So when I left that farm and I left that little town and I joined the U.S. Navy, and the this transformation that you're going through at each of these stages, right? When I first went in the Navy, I said, okay, I'll serve my country and I can make a little bit of money and I can help grandma, right? But once I got in the Navy, I realized, oh, shoot, these people, this is a war machine. I'm
Mhm.
on a battleship, a destroyer. We go to kill people. And so I had to make a decision that I'm not going to kill people, you know? So when I got the orders to go to Vietnam, I resisted. I was a
Ah.
Vietnam war resister in the military. I refused to go and fight these people because they had done nothing to me. And the people who wanted me to go fight them had done some awful things to me. So that was a transformation for me, that I could take that kind of stance against the most powerful force in the world and go on trial
Mm.
at a court martial. I didn't win, but I won, and that my punishment wasn't extraordinary, because I had befriended the captain in another, the admiral really, in another kind of relationship, and he was the judge in the court, and I was kind of like his friend. So my punishment was minimal.
Mm.
But that also, that relationship with this white admiral and this black young man sailor, that taught me lessons. This admiral and me could be friends and work at a certain level, and the common white sailor and me would be enemies based on his daily racism. And I
Mhm.
had to kind of reckon between those two things and make decisions on how I created the me that would go forward. Sometime before this, I'd met a man named Malcolm X, and during the period I'm in the military, he got assassinated. And that
Ah.
transformed me quite a bit. It didn't at first, but when my brother sent me all of the clippings of his assassination, and I put it in a big photo album, and I'm showing it to the people on my ship. And one day the CID, the Central Intelligence Division, came to my locker and seized it. Well, as a 19-year-old, I don't know what this is about. What the hell? These are newspaper clippings of a killing of a man. Why is the CIA seizing it? Okay.
Oh,
That was one of those things that helped to make me back up and realize there is more going on in the world that you're in than you're aware of. Become aware of the world that you're in. Um,
yes.
and all through life, you go through these changes. Like my first girlfriend, I thought betrayed me terribly. We actually still friends all these many years. But the pain of that went with me for many years. And then my second girlfriend, when I went in the Navy, she went and married who I thought was my best male friend. And though I handled it very kind, very cool, the pain of that bothered me a lot. Because see, I was in the black movement since I was 14, and a lot of people didn't appreciate that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It would always be, here come James with that black stuff. I'm gonna say the real word they use. They use the S word. You know, damn that like, you know. And but I didn't
Well,
understand. I
the
thought all of
mothership airwaves are open. If
yeah,
you need to
I
speak
thought all of
freely,
us
do
should be
so.
doing this, fighting for change, fighting for transformation, fighting for. But I didn't understand it was just as fighting for change. We were fighting for freedom. We were fighting for civil rights. But everybody didn't agree with that. Most of our people didn't agree with that. And
Right.
for a young person, you were always very ostracized for being in that place. In the way I was, very fanatically there, as I've been all my life. Um, but through all those years, is you learn, Oya will teach you things. Change will teach you. Like I was very angry with the women who I was like the lady I was supposed to get married. She went south on me. The one day when so four sisters. So I was really and I was like one of those country boys, to my word, dedicated, celibate until I was 18, deliberately so. And so I couldn't understand why everybody else was like that, you know. And
Right.
but it took me years to say it wasn't even a process of forgiving anybody because I realized none of those people did me wrong. They were just being themselves,
Right.
right?
Oh, you
They were
said
just being
something
themselves,
there.
and they didn't do me wrong. So the little
Ooh,
bit of anger I did hold, even though a few of them were ancestors, I gave that back. I said, I'm not angry with y'all. I know even for those of you who are at peace and at rest, I I chose you. I had options. I chose you knowing who you were, thinking I can change you or transform you, instead of focusing on my primary responsibility, changing and transforming me. And then
Ashe.
finding others who was in that same change transformative process. And everybody was in it, but at different levels and different degrees, you know? And so what I began to appreciate is that you're responsible for what happens to you because you made those decisions to seek out those relationships and to either stay in them or leave them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't blame the other person in the relationship because they had the same responsibility that you have to stay in them or leave them. And in many cases, they chose to leave them, and I couldn't understand why they had left me. They didn't leave me, they left the relationship that didn't fit what they were about. Maybe they didn't know how to better explain it to me or how to better make the move. All of that I would learn later as when you think about process and relationships. And then we live in a culture that don't teach you how to build relationships, a culture that don't teach you the value of relationship, a culture that don't teach you the process by which you go about building a relationship built on truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what this culture teaches us. And there's no, and where it does happen, there's very little formal ways of doing it. Where in our ancient culture, the culture every day was that formality. The
Mm-hmm.
culture in Africa was the education system, and the formalities were built in. If I walked into a village and I saw a woman with her hair braided a certain way, I know just from the visualization, she's either single, she's married, she's available for marriage, whether she's a pregnant mother. All of this is I'm told by the design of the hair, and the methodology or the type of clothing being worn.
Mhm. Or even the wearing of the aleques.
Yes,
Certain
right,
aleques say
right.
certain things.
Any of the beads worn in any part, the waist beads, everything is telling me, giving me a message from the culture about how I should perceive and allow myself to be perceived, how I should behave if I want to be in order with the environment I just walked into. And
Hmm.
so the changes that's necessary for me to go through to fit in that environment, I would then begin to address them as necessity. But I have to know that we live now in cultures that doesn't have any rules. Uh, they
I,
have rules,
I,
but they don't have the kind of overt formal rules that everybody agree. Yes, these are the rules, and we'll all try to abide by them. And when we can't, we innovate on them with consent.
yes.
We don't have that in the environments we live in, unfortunately.
I do see this state as a blessing in disguise. And I'm going to tell you why.
Hmm.
Because with us losing a lot of the structure and a lot of destructive structures being encouraged, I'm noticing that amongst smaller groups of people the ancestral memory in us is awakening, and we're
Yeah,
buckling back down on the values on our own. And
no,
it's a
I
sprout
agree.
for now. But as you said on the farm, as we grow in these gardens, that sprout is going to eventually grow a stem, and that stem's going to grow branches, and those branches are going to grow apples.
Hmm.
It's starting, and it's like, because when a lot of chaos and calamity happens in the world, I do sometimes just sit with the wind and say, why? Like, well, why is this being allowed to happen? Because everyone is being given a choice, you know, personified by Eshu's crossroad, if you will, given a choice as to whether you want to respond to that ancestral memory or follow the popular path of destruction. So even the chaos does have its blessing in disguise. It's just in a little sprout from what I could see. Could you agree with that?
To some degree, the only weakness with that is that most people don't know they have an option. And when they
Mm,
get to the crossroads, you remember something else can happen at the crossroads. You do nothing, and we call that insanity. So
right.
most people get to that crossroads and don't go north, east, south, or west. They just stand there, okay, and deteriorate. Um, and so, yes, all over, everybody has never ever lost everything. Everyone who lived here before Columbus came here came from somewhere, right? And they came here
Right.
from Africa, whether they came here with Abu Bakr from Mali, or whether they came here when Pangea took place and the planet was still touching one another, whether they came here when you could still walk across, that doesn't matter. The genesis is Africa, right?
Hmm.
And everybody that came here had to create a process by which they would try to seek what we call in the Yoruba Iwapele, the gentle character,
Yes.
what we call in
Gentle
Kemet,
character.
Ma'at, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. All societies have such a thing. All societies have a place where you would find harmony and balance. And
Hmm.
something happened though when a group of people shows up on the scene, as happened with the European population 10,000 years ago, that did not have that harmony and balance as its goal, but chaos out of necessity to survive. And when they
Hmm.
came into our environment, we were not ready to protect ourselves against it. We got decimated. And we are trying to come back from that. Now, in the process of decimation, everybody didn't get crushed completely. Many of us who came over here on the slave ship, we brought a lot of retentions with us. Many who was here when the slave ships got here, they amalgamated with us. Where were they going to go? The whites had the guns and the power, and they raped every black village that was already here. They didn't evaporate. They weren't allowed to stay in their little villages in South Carolina. They had to come and marry me and you who stepped off the slave ship. And we amalgamated and became one people. And so, and faced with the same crises of how to be human in the face of the reality we find ourselves dealing with. How to be godly, because in the African context of being human is to be godly. And godly is a reference to the harmony and balance in the universe being normal in the behavior of the human being. And so we've always tried to get back there. Even the Black church was an attempt to do that because it was the one sanctuary we were allowed, right? You couldn't go and be Yoruba or Akan or Igbo or in the belly and set up your little spot anywhere in the road because white folks would burn that shit down and burn you down with it. But you had one place where you can be the Indabelly. You had one place where you can be the Yoruba. You had one place where you can be the Akan, even though you had to disguise it, and that was the church. Problem is, when you do that long enough and it becomes intergenerational, and you don't transmit the original wisdom, it gets forgotten. And we can walk into a church and see African rituals and African behavior, but not recognize them to be African. So we can't then utilize them as Africans for transformation or change purposes. I hope that made sense. And so
it did. It did.
We have always had the priest and the priestess among us in secret. They've always been here. You know, they may not have had all the tools they needed, but they were always here. Sometimes they were our preachers. Sometimes they were the root lady. Sometimes they were the midwives. Sometimes they were the tarot card reader. Sometimes they were the what do you call it? The
channeler, the medium,
the astrologers, and so forth. The priests and priestesses have always been with us, but they had to disguise themselves in order to maintain whatever integrity of wisdom they could give us. And many times they were ostracized by the greater society out of their ignorance and having accepted another pathway, thinking that other pathway was the only pathway worthy of acceptance. And as time went on and we saw the destruction from not being able to recognize change as a process that should be managed and governed appropriately, then we started looking for what is the process. And so we saw the rise of the Yoruba movement. We saw the rise of the Pokemon in the Caribbean. We saw the rise of the hoodoo in the South. And we saw the rise of the coming of the Akan tradition to America. And we saw the integration of that even within Islam, a West African Islam, coming to America, which is quite different from an Middle Eastern Arab Islam. And we saw all of these things trying to help us find a way in the form of a Noble Drew Ali and the Morris Science Temple, in the form of an Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in the form of a Marcus Garvey, in the form of a George Washington Carver. We didn't know Carver was talking, that George Washington Carver could have been any priest in any Yoruba village, given the knowledge he had and the way he used the knowledge. It was obvious that he was either from a Yoruba culture spiritually or from an Akan culture spiritually. He talked about going out and talking to the plants and the plants telling him what to do and what they would best be used for. And I bet most people probably laughed at him. But yet he was quite at ease and quite at peace because he could communicate with nature in this way and nature could communicate with him in this way. And he was transformed by that communication and the change that brought about that transformation. And we're just beginning to understand that now. You know, we're just beginning to understand that there is a force in nature that represents change. And that change leads to transformation, and that transformation leads to a new being and behavior and character formation.
Ashe. Very, very well said. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's about our time. Before we wrap, is there any projects, any way that our listeners can follow and get more of your wisdom, Baba Small?
I don't know how much wisdom I got, sister, but I have a page. It's called Professor Small African World. That's my Facebook page. Everything I'm doing, I try to put up on that page. Everything I try to put you on that page as often as I can, so people can know what you're doing, what different spirits is trying
Ah, thank you.
to teach us how to grow and to become. Our life is a constant process of becoming, but change is the center core of the process of becoming. And so
Well, yeah,
Oya represents a major force in everybody's lives, whether they're a child of Oya esoterically or not. Oya is a center core in the change that leads to transformation that make you a better person in the world. So go to Professor Small, AfricanWorld.com, and you'll know what I'm doing next. I know I'm going to be in Tennessee next weekend, not this weekend, the next weekend. And then I'll be in Jacksonville, Florida, 2 weekends from there, and then South Carolina a week or so after that. And there's some little things in between. Um, but I just try to continue my teaching as much as I can. You know, when you get up to a certain age, my next birthday, I'll be 80 years old. So I have to get as much of this work done while
oh,
my
bless.
body is healthy and I'm strong, and I can do what I can do. But the teaching will be here when these bodies are gone. You're sitting there, you're a gorgeous, a beautiful African queen of the highest
Thank you.
order. But one day that body will leave here, like this one will leave here.
Yes.
But the energy and the vibration that's in these bodies will never leave here, because
Ashe.
we have tuned into energies and vibrations that was here before us, and we've become those energies and vibrations. Someone else will tune into our energy and vibration and become us. That's again
Ashe.
change and transformation when we're gone. So that's what our life should be. When you know, teach. Simple as that. If you know, teach. What you know, teach. I think it was Zora Neale Hurston said, you want to go there, you want to be there, but to be there, you must go there. But to go there, you must know there. You want to be there, but to be there, you must go there. To go there, you must know there. To know there, you got to be willing and ready to be changed, transformed, understand. That's how you end up in the place called to be there. We
Ashe.
are forever becoming. We are always becoming. And it is the knowledge that allows us to become. Becoming is a process of change and transformation, always happening, never stopping. Oya is forever. She is eternal in the
That's
spirit
right.
of the human being and the cosmos and ecology we live in. So thank
Thank you.
you, my dear Mothership Captain, Queen, Princess, and Goddess. And you're all that. You're the goddess of the mothership. You're the queen of the mothership. You're the princess of the mothership. And you're indeed the captain of the mothership. So I know Django thanks you. He's standing there in all of his glory. Oya is just beside him. She's there in her glory. Forever red, black, and green. And then there's something you can't see, but I put you see that thing there? That's
Yes.
Ezeli Frida. Ezeli Frida is one of the warrior queens of the voodoo. Um, uh, what do you call it? Oh goodness. Um, we call it orishas in
Yes.
Yoruba, but
I'm looking at it.
yeah,
Oh, that's
she's a
nice.
mermaid. She's swimming with the fish. She's equal to uh,
That's Yamaja energy as
Oshun
well with
and
the
Yemaja,
mermaid
kind of a
essence.
combination between Oshun and Yemaja, you know.
Hmm.
So I get watched over by a lot of gods and goddesses who take good care of me, and they're all over the place.
Shame.
And of course, my mouth
I
is full of
see.
them.
Ah. And I give honor to your ancestors, Kika Mashe, to
They're
all
all
living
very high.
teachers. I honor
They're
your Orishas.
my
I
great
thank you.
grandmother,
I'm
my
very
great
thankful.
grandfather, all of them. They're always with me, even when I walk out the door. I walk with this army in here. When I move, this army moves.
I can feel that too. I just heard the ludicrous song. When I move, you move. Just like
Hmm.
that. When I move, you move. Just
Yep,
like
I like that from Ludacris. So
yes,
thank
because
you
you
again
do
for
feel that
having me.
force behind you. You really do.
Mm,
You
thank
can
you for
feel the
having me on
company.
the ship. I have enjoyed our moments, and let's do it again. Maybe in another couple of weeks, let's do another one.
Absolutely.
Continue the
We
work.
made it to start us a series
Okay, let's do it.
because 2025 is Oya's year, and I don't think our mother is done with us here.
Nope. She's got a lot for you and I to do, child. So let's do the work while we can do the work.
Ashe, yes, we shall. Thank you very, very much for joining me.
Yes, ma'am. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. And there you have it, star seeds. Embracing changes and changing times. That's Oya energy. That's kind of how you take the Orisha energy and soak up in the wisdom, break it down into the practical, and transform it into something you can use. So here's to the Oya energy in each and every one of you. And may she inspire each and every one of you to make positive changes, to be positive changes, and to stay in a mindset of positive changes, even through the challenges of ever changing times. And we got about 8 hours left on the clock before we get back to the groove 24/7 on the mothership. So, what better song to end out this session than music from Aretha Franklin and Michael McDonald with These Are Ever Changing Times. And if you enjoyed this music, this mystics, and this mojo, then by all means, please show your seed of support to 222.9 The Mothership Internet Radio for the road less travel using the Cash App and the PayPal donation link. And as always, stay beamed up to the groove. All the information is in the description box. We now return to the groove. This is 222.9 The Mothership Internet Radio for the road less traveled. And also make sure that you visit Baba James Small on all of his social media platforms. And I will also be posting links to whatever he has going on so we can all stay one cosmic nation under a divine groove. Beam up. Love and light villagers, I'm iiiYansaje Muse, and welcome to the Cosmic Ear Hustle, where we talk about the voodoo that we do to make this world a better place. For those of you who are squeamish about that word, voodoo just means spirit. The spirit of making the most of what you've been given. That creates alchemy. Alchemy is magic, and we give it back to the universe in the best of ways.